Lucius Annibus Seneca, also known as Seneca today, was born in Cordoba. He is a famous known Stoic philosopher who was born and raised, during the same time as Jesus Christ. His father was Marcus Ananias Seneca, an imperial procurator known for his authority on rhetoric, the art of public speaking and debate. He was an imperial procurator and was interestingly known as the father of Novatus Gallio, the governor of Achaia, who declined to exercise jurisdiction over St. Paul in the book of Acts of the Apostles in the Bible, chapter 18, verses 11 through 17. Seneca originally followed the philosophy of Stoicism, one of the most influential philosophies in the Graeco-Roman world. Prior to Seneca's letters, Stoicism was founded by Zeno, who was born as a Phoenician descent in the city of Cyprus in the Roman Empire in 336-35 BC. Zeno taught and lectured in what is known in Greek as a stoa, a colonnade or porch, which in turn developed and was modified by many thinkers to lead into the philosophy of Stoicism on topics ranging from logical, ethical, or cosmological questions. Morality for the Stoics, for Seneca, existed in the world as a single great community in which all men are brothers, ruled by a supreme providence that can be spoken of, according to choice or context, under what Stoics call the divine reason, creative reason, nature, the spirit or purpose of the universe, destiny, personal God, or the gods. For the Stoics, all people have a duty to live in conformity with the divine will, and to achieve this first off has to be achieved in their lives with what is known as natural or nature's laws. Secondly, all people must assign themselves and uncomplainingly to whatever fate may send to them. Only when people live life this way, by not setting values too highly that at any time can be taken away from them, people can discover truth, the unshakable peace and contentment. In order to achieve truth, unshakable peace and contentment, people then must flee from ambition, luxury, and avarice, according to Seneca. To live in accordance with nature, the Stoics thought that man must question convention, draining ourselves to do whatever except the necessities in life, which are, he said, plain food, water, basic clothing, and shelter. And we are to develop reason, which separates us as human beings from the animal world. Human beings, thus, are meant to be set free or perfect our rational element. As a particle of universal reason, also known as the divine spark in our makeup, that it may campaign against and conquer pain, grief, superstition, and the fear of death. Reason then will guide us to viewing things as neither good or bad, but that thinking makes it so. We then, through reason, must discipline the pleasures and passions and subordinate the body that we have and the emotions to the mind and the soul. When we live like this, we will arrive at the true end of man, happiness. In ancient Greek philosophy, there existed what is known as the summum bonum, spelled as S-U-M-M-U-M-B-O-N-U-M, which means in Greek the supreme ideal, which is characterized in 4 categories: wisdom, or the moral insight, courage, self-control, and justice, or upright dealing. The supreme ideal enables people to be self-sufficient, immune to suffering, and superior to the wounds and upsets of life. The Stoics were even praised and acknowledged in their paradoxes they designed, namely one directed towards the vanity of worldly possessions. Stoicism inculcated duties in courage, endurance, self-control, self-reliance, upright conduct, in dealing with simple and unluxurious habits, rationality, and obedience to the state, or today would be the government. During his life, Seneca sought to practice Stoicism and prove its beneficial life lessons to the world. With much of the world, particularly Western Europe, leaning toward Christian morals and virtues, many ideas of Stoicism were overlooked, rejected, or incorporated in the Bible even throughout the millennia, following after Jesus Christ's death, and even during his lifetime, even before. As for Seneca, he wrote for a relatively narrow circle of educated people, and in his letters and essays, he shows that Stoicism closely reconciled with many human facts and frailty of nature that we have. In his life, Seneca sought to be kind and forgiving towards others, to, quote, live for the other person. With his way of living, he avoided being ostentatiously different from those he tried to win from moral ignorance. In his interpretation of Stoicism, Seneca sought to exalt man's importance in the universe rather than to abase him from before a higher authority, who for the Greeks would be the gods. For people around the world, Allah. Also, many people know divinities and gods, but for most people, it was the Judeo-Christian conception of God. For Seneca, Stoicism sought virtues as looked down to its reward and vice system as its own punishment. Therefore, Stoicism promotes man's relationship, union, purpose, and importance. In today's societies, people lack so many of the Stoic virtues Seneca, Zeno, and several Stoic philosophers embraced in the ancient world. Stoicism was used by Seneca simply to practically cure souls, bringing peace and order to the feverish minds of men pursuing the wrong aims in life. Philosophy was designed to speak to the human condition. Philosophers for Seneca should be regarded as someone to turn to for advice or consolation. This can never be further from the truth today in modern societies. So many people ridicule philosophers, and philosophy is foolish, stupid, ignorant, and a waste of time, especially those in the Christian communities. Those same people who embrace many philosophical ideas that are embedded within the Bible. A philosopher thus should always deliver a well-ordered, well-regulated message, such as his own life, and never in a hurry like so many people are in life. In our modern society with our superiors, bosses, managers, CEOs, businessmen, etc., there is always a means upon which there is a suppression of thoughts and ideas. In the individual's will and identity of individuals themselves, there is lost in the way of which people are treated, the identity and individuality of an individual within the society which they live in. In Seneca, our superiors ought to react and read individuals how they ought to be treated. This ancient text begins with a golden rule that's later found in the Bible itself. Seneca said, quote, whenever it strikes you how much power you have over your slave, let it also strike you that your master has just as much power over you. Given how common slavery was during the ancient times, Seneca was revolutionary for his time, speaking about equal rights, representation in government, and equality amongst the sexes, amongst other topics in relation to human morality, and other issues of importance in his time period as well as today. Yet today, when we think about our lives, there's many people who control us, our masters. They control our income, our financial success, and they try to cripple those people, labeling them as slaves is meaningless by doing repetitive, meaningless tasks, forever ringing in the subconscious state of will within the people they control. And far too many people today realize that this happens to them in their lives. Seneca mentioned how as a society, philosophy holds true in providing counsel when men are facing death, poverty, they're tormented by wealth. Philosophy seeks straightforwardness and simplicity in keeping with the goodness. When we have afflictions in our lives and our being, Seneca says the worse a person is, the less he feels it. In a conversation with Lucius Gaius, a Roman satirist, Seneca proclaims to him and people today that philosophy will save us. Philosophy will save us out of a deep sleep. If you were to devote your life to philosophy today, you would experience an enormous gap that widens between yourself and other men. As a human, you'll end up far in advance over all mankind. Seneca, therefore, offers a solution to you in your life. He has an interesting claim and an interesting idea. He mentions that philosophy's power resides in blunting all the blows of circumstances in life. Whenever you feel stressed, in despair for meaning or purpose in your life, or in distress, philosophy allows you peace and tranquility despite your current status in life, despite all the problems you're facing today in the modern technological era that we face. When we look at things, it often appears in our daily lives that there's various sicknesses and illnesses that carry on through us. And Seneca, living in his old age, he learned to embrace the fact that the love of money, power, and other maladies that affect the minds of men, there are moments when they seem abated and they're most dangerous in life. As a Stoic philosopher, therefore, he claims that there's two elements in the universe that should be distinguished, that should exist in the way we think. We have things such as matter, which is inert and inactive, a substance with unlimited potential, destined to remain, and no person sets it in motion. And we have cause, which he describes as matter as reasons. This cause is the reason in which matter itself becomes whatever it desires and fashions it into different products. Matter comes before cause, according to Seneca. For the Stoics, only one cause exists, that which brings things into being. Various other philosophers, particularly Aristotle and Plato, would argue otherwise. They mention various causes. For example, Aristotle mentions four causes and Plato mentions five. And when we look at the differences, we see that there's a big debate between them, even during their time period. However, when we look at Seneca's letters, we can see the value in his words and ideas that come today in the modern world. Simple life experiences have changed the course of human history and the lives of people today. One example is when Seneca speaks to his friend about not being concerned about any profit or loss he may receive. As he aged, he learned to embrace life, learn life how little money he had. As with the journey, he said, quote, "One in which all people take is on which does not have to be traveled to the very end, but stopped in the middle of it. Yet life is never incomplete if it is honorable." There is a famous story of a man in ancient Greece named Tullius Marcellus, who wanted to commit suicide. After meditating about it for some time and speaking to his friends and colleagues about it, he eventually spoke to a Stoic friend of Seneca, who approached him and told him about the value of death. The Stoic instructed Tullius that life is common amongst rulers, slaves, and animals alike. Yet, death was something honorable, enlightened, and courageous. As a human, Tullius and most people live the same lives as animals do. Everything we eat, the food we have, the sex we have, it's a never-ending cycle. Death is experienced amongst all people as with life. Seneca spoke about heroism in death, how death is inevitable in life, fixed and a permanent part of might, and an eternal train of destiny that all people must ride in. Often so, individuals today will moan and weep in turmoil concerning the death of their loved ones, yet Seneca demonstrates that death is a natural process of life that should be considered. We, therefore, should be a slave to nothing in life to which we have. For most people, when we look at their lives, are complete slaves, and this is emphasized and shown in the way Seneca speaks about other people, their circumstances, their jobs, the way they live their life, who they hang out with, etc. Our sufferings and pains on our lives are trivial, provided that we don't think about it. Thousands of years before the usage of modern medicines and technologies, the Stoics knew that the way you perceive things affects you both physically and mentally. The way you think shapes your behavior. For only when you think negatively, when you convince yourself in your mind as unhappy, do you become unhappy. Seneca speaks about human suffering, pain, death, turmoil, despair, natural and processes that exist in life. But with these, many life lessons could be taught from him as a Stoic, and Seneca speaks about these issues throughout his letters that he writes. Just as in the hope of my YouTube channel, as with Seneca, I seek to make men free by imparting to them philosophy in their daily lives, the love of wisdom, all the while paving towards virtue, like he mentions. If you're a professor, student, worker, businessman, stay-at-home mom, etc., and you like my YouTube videos, please subscribe and leave a comment below on this video and other videos that you watch at my YouTube channel, The Love of Wisdom. My name is Anthony Pensa, and you just listened to the Love of Wisdom podcast. Thank you very much. Thank you, and have a great day.